is from the Internet Crime Unit, Mr. Fang Zhijian. Mr. Fang is from the Operations Unit. They shall make speech first, and then there will be Q&A following the summary. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and let us know which media you come from. The maximum questions allowed are 3. Mr. Xie, start from you. Good afternoon. Today, we have 3 things to report to you. First of all, about the North District Hospital case, some updates for you. Secondly, last night, there were some protests in MTR stationed, and they vandalized the facilities. And thirdly, Mr. Mo from Internet Security and Crime Unit will introduce the Internet rumors and Internet bullying cases. The 3 arrested persons in the North Hospital today attended the hearing at the North Magistrate, and they're charged with the crime of wounding and other criminal offenses. The police would never tolerate such criminal behaviors, and we will never cover up the crimes. We will follow up with the case in a serious manner. About the July 21st case in Yuanlang, and we've arrested 2 persons. They shall attend the court hearing tomorrow. We will follow up with relevant evidences and have close contact with the law and politics department. And you've also taken notice that last night some violent incidents happened in Yuanlang. Let me explain to you why the police did the dispersal. Around 7 p.m. last night, a huge amount of crowd gathered at the MTR station of Yuanlang. They held a sit-in and sent some posters. It began with a peaceful demonstration. Then another batch of protesters, they rushed onto the streets out of the MTR station. They used rubbish bin and road debris to set up barricades, try to block the traffic. And then the police start the deployment. However, the protesters use laser beams to shoot at the police in order to bring the incidents to a calm status. After several warnings issued, the police conducted dispersal. During the process, some protesters on the escalators, they hurled water bottles and debris at police. The police tried to use tear gas, and then the protesters hurled large rubbish bin on the road. And on the road, there were a large amount of police and journalists. It would be a great threat to them on the road. So the police had to fire a rubber bullet. And such decision was rational and justified. And then these protesters retreated back into the Yuanlang MTR station, and they used fighting facilities to shoot at the police, and they used the water hose to eject water at police. And they also used some unidentified liquid on the road, as well as dust. When they retreated into the MTR station, there were residents as well. Their personal safety was threatened. The police were waited outside the Yuanlang MTR station, and then these protesters, they occupied the MTR station. In the small hours, these protesters they use train to leave the Yuanlang station. We have to reiterate that we respect the freedom of assembly and speech. However, when violent acts and unlawful incidents happen, the police will definitely take actions. We've remained high-level restraint and tolerance in last night's incident. The major considerations are the safety and order of the venue and the protesters and residents. About the numbers, in last night's Yuanlang's dispersal, the police made 2 arrests charged with the crime of unlawful assembly, and they were 27 and 36 years old respectively, and they are now under detention. About the Zhangguan knife attack happened the day after, before yesterday. They were charged with the wounding. And earlier today, they attended the court hearing. In yesterday's operations, no police officers sustained injury. About the use of bullets and grenades, yesterday we fired only 1 rubber bullet, and that's all. Some clarifications to make. We've noticed that some overseas media pointed out that on August 5th, the police at the higher level of the government building, some said at the 20th floor, we released the tear gas. We must clarify that we did not dispatch anyone to go on to the 20th floor to fire tear gas. And I look at the video, I thought it's an issue with the shooting angle. The police tried to shoot at the sky. And on that day, some violent protesters attempted to use slingshots to hurl the bricks at the police on the overpass. The height of the overpass is around 2 to 3 floors high. After evaluation of the commander on site, we fire tear gas at this point, which is maybe 4 to 5 floors high, to disperse the violent protesters. On another photo, you could tell that back then, the violent protesters hurled bricks and used slingshots to attack our police officers, while we use tear gas or other weapons. We must choose a tactically advantageous points. Just as the case that I've mentioned before, if they were attacking us at the 2 or 3 floors high down, we have to get onto a higher ground because that's tactically strategic and advantageous. We have many tactical thoughts. Mr. Ma. I shall take up a little bit of time about internet bullying. Some inflammatory rumors. Starting from June, police personal information and their families' information have been disseminated on the internet, including their names, ID card number, birth date, home address, photos, without the consent. And these information were sent via social platforms. And their children's names, schools, and even which class were disseminated. Up until now, there are more than 150 police officers and their family members' personal information were disseminated, and they've also received threatening. Some might be the cell phone or text message harassment, even face-to-face harassment at their working venues. And some of them receive harassment postal mails saying that their home address and names are disclosed already. And some even threaten that they will be murdered. So let us look at some of the online information. On the internet, it says you will not be brought to justice by law, so your parents and your children must take your place and to be punished. Your child will not survive to 7 years old, or they will be dead at 20 years old. So the children's names, ID number, school, which level. So kindergarten, even kindergarten information could be disclosed. And about instructions of how to deal with challenging by the police officers face-to-face. And this is another thing on the internet. It says all the unlawful acts conducted by the protesters were actually done by the police in disguise. And the police will be murdered, and the wife of the police officer will be sexually harassed, even raped, and the police can be killed and murdered directly, this and that. It worries us a lot because in recent months, these discussions on the internet were not just discussions, it's just lip service. We're seeing some paintings on the wall. Bricks were hurled into the police dormitories. The children's rooms were vandalized. Besides the disclosure of the personal information, we're also seeing some extreme sayings on different social platforms to some inflammatory wordings to ask people to make bombs to murder the police and their family members. For example, if the chief executive do not resign, then we shall murder everyone in the government building. And we shall establish a temporary government, and we shall bring Hong Kong back to ourselves. So various sayings, and they're not only using wordings and taxes, and they're also teaching people how to make petrol bombs. How to make petrol bombs and how to use petrol bombs. There are some real-life photos instructing people how to make what's the proportion of different components. There are even videos teaching you how to hurl the petrol bombs. In some violent protests, we actually saw protesters using these offensive weapons to hurl at police officers and vandalize police buildings. We've noticed that some statements were extremely violent. For example, they were discussing what kind of knife could actually kill a police. They were saying machete won't actually kill a person because it will just cut off the muscle. Small knife can get into the intestines of the police officers. The death ratio could reach 80%. If you meet with a police on the street, then use a small knife to cut into his intestine and rub his gums, and then it'll be great. And they also encourage people to get into the family, to kill the family members. If you kill more than one, that will be a win. If necessary, more violent acts should be conducted, and it's like a recommendation that all residents should turn into terrorists, so that if the family members were killed, the police will live forever in shadows. So these are not just words. In our operations, in our ransack, we've actually found slingshot knives as well as other offensive weapons. Some discussions said at the very beginning, then don't do this, don't hurt the family members. Then gradually, then all the Hong Kong residents agree with us. And then people say, don't do school bullying. And then people started to tolerate school bullying. And this Hong Kong society has slowly accepted our behaviors. So this is storytelling by them. And they're saying it's only normal to be violent. They even commended the Hong Kong residents who accepted such violent behavior, saying they're progressive. Such extreme statements and behaviors, especially when targeted at children, is far exceeded what we can accept as a civil society. It's the seed of hatred disseminated on the internet, encourage people to use violence to resolve the problem. And the society will fall into a deep pit of hatred. I believe the majority of Hong Kong residents love peace and do not want to see Hong Kong to develop towards that direction. Now I want to share with you some of the false information on the internet. It's information with explosive amount of data. The internet has brought with us many conveniences, but I have to remind you, on the internet, there are many false information, highly risky. I want to show you the misleading information on the internet. For example, the first one. It pretended to be the financial administration. to say that Hong Kong might face with the capital shortage risk, to encourage residents to withdraw a huge amount of cash from the bank. But this is false. The financial administration never gave such reminder. And this is the Hong Kong International Airport. And it looks like dim. Then in different social media platforms, some said the electricity were cut off, the water were cut off, but that was not true. They said the government will purge the internet, will purge the international airport, and that was not true. And in the New City Plaza, for example, in the New City Plaza, said this police officer to purchase the family members and hit the family members, and that was a misleading information. In fact, this was not the truth. The police was actually protecting that family. So I'd like to show you a footage to see whether if this police was attacking the family. There are many other cases. Some media use photos, and then rumors were generated to mislead the netizens, to say because there was something in the pocket of these people who use slingshots, so all violent acts were actually conducted by police in disguise. This photo was edited. On the internet, you could see these photos, and they've edited these photos, and it says the police hurl bricks. Police is violent. So what was the truth? If we see from a different angle, you will know it's a different story. Please look at the red circle. It shall be clear because it's a slow movement. Quite obvious. The police was trying to put the brick on the ground instead of hurling it out. On the internet, some said the police kick other protesters to incite the protesters. But that was not true if you look at it from another angle. Because the photo is low pixel, then it's very hard to tell the actual incident. The police was using the hand, the arm, instead of the leg. So now we have done the comparison between the low pixel and the high pixel. We will know what's the truth. Some said on the internet that the police push a young person down to the ground from an overpass. If we look at the video, we'll know what happened. In the red circle, that was the protester. He suddenly started to run. He was quite lucky because the police rescued him, pulled him onto the bridge. 2 other cases share with you. So it's an information said on the 42nd floor of the building. And if a mainland police officer was detained by us, then the Hong Kong police will murder one of their own to tell that they're actually this person is actually from Hong Kong, not from Chinese mainland. And they said that they've checked the facts. So they leverage their angle to tell their stories, to mislead people. The police has said they use horrid intimidation to at the suspects. So their children will be punished instead of them. So those were the misleading facts on the internet. And we want to remind the netizens and residents. Sometimes you believe a photo, but photos could be shot at a different angle, could be misleading information as well. So please check the facts. So the most important thing is to stop and think about it and to seek truth from facts. And do not resend the rumors. And that's all from me. Let me summarize. Yunlong stationed as an important hub. The protesters vandalized MTR stations, and this has badly affected the normal lives of the residents. And the society won't accept such behaviors. Mr. Maud mentioned the internet bullying and misleading information. I want to reiterate, whatever demand you have, it shouldn't be expressed by violence. Internet bullying and personal information disclosure are hurting others. In the past 2 years, the demonstrations and processions badly affected other people's normal lives, even their small businesses. So we appeal to members of the public to take care of others' interests. And that wraps up my briefing.
persons for participating in a riot. They will appear in Fanling Magistrate tomorrow. As for the incident yesterday, at around 7 p.m. last night, the incident began with a sit-in protest inside the Yuen Long MTR station. The gathering was generally peaceful at first, but later at night, the incident became violent. Some protesters occupy main roads in the vicinity and point laser beams to provoke other citizens and our officers on site. They set barricades with road signs, railings, and different objects to obstruct the traffic. Our officers gave multiple warnings to the protester, but all fell on deaf ears. In face of the escalating warnings to the protester, the officers had no choice but to disperse the crowds. During our dispersal operation, some radical protesters threw a rubbish bin and various objects from a fruit beach onto the police officers on the ground. Our officers used puffer spray and one round of rubber slug to contain the situation. Then a group of protesters appeared in the MTR station and broke fire safety facilities recklessly. They sprayed fire extinguisher randomly and blocked emergency exits. Such unlawful acts threatened the safety of everyone at the scene. During this violent incident, our officers were on alert outside the station. At around midnight, the protesters left the scene, leaving the MTR station in ruins. The police condemned all violent and unlawful acts, while we respect citizens' right to assembly and freedom of speech. We appeal to everyone to restore peaceful and orderly participation in public. I'll move on to arrest figures. During the operation, we arrested 2 males, one aged 27 and the other 36 years old, for unlawful assembly in Yuen Long last night. I'll talk about the issue of cyberbullying faced by our colleagues and family members. A large number of our officers and their families have their personal data unlawfully collected and leaked, a practice known as doxing. The personal data leaked include their ID card numbers, birthday, telephone numbers, address, and photos. Such data was disclosed on social media without the consent of our colleagues. So far, in total of 1,614 officers and their family members have faced such doxing. They also suffer all sorts of harassment, including nuisance call, verbal intimidation, and even death threats. Some people misuse our officers' personal data to apply for loans. Apart from personal data leakage, some people make radical and inciting remarks online. Some online comments incite others to commit crimes. They include making explosives, starting fires, using slingshots, petrol bombs, and other offensive weapons to damage police premises, to hurt and even murder police officers and their families. I believe most Hong Kong people support peaceful and rational means of expression. We do not wish to see such hatred in the society. Another message I have for you is the issue of misleading information online. We understand with information explosion in this age, it's quite hard to tell what is real and what is fake. So I would like to stress the importance of fact-checking. We hope members of the public can spare some time to fact-check before forwarding messages on social media. In conclusion, I would like to stress that in the Yuen Long incident last night, the protester damaged a very important transport facility, causing great inconvenience to the general public. Our message has always been clear. If protesters don't use violence, we won't use force. The incident began with a sit-in protest, relatively peaceful, so the police did not intervene initially. It was not until protesters became violent and our officers used appropriate force for the dispersal. Also, protester violence also extended to cyberspace with acts like cyberbullying and doxing of our officers and their families. While we respect citizens' right to assembly and freedom of speech, we appeal to everyone in Hong Kong to restore peaceful and rational means of expression. Please join us in restoring public order in society. Thank you.
好，每位最多問3條，經濟唔該。
想問翻咧。